Welcome to my channel. My name is Bryndís, and in today's video I am going to be talking about Mathilda by Mary Shelley. So I read Mathilda in January, and it's been like just a couple of weeks, but I've been using these weeks to really think about this book, think about this story, and kind of get to grips with how I liked it and the things that I liked. This was a 5-star read for me. I will just tell you straight from the beginning. I loved this book. It was amazing. It is so beautiful, so romantic, and just it's like a fluffy, I don't know, it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much that I had to put on a red lipstick for this video because I felt that I couldn't talk about Mathilda properly without having a red lipstick. It's just such a book that I loved it so much. But okay, let me go into the review. First of all, I'm trying really hard not to have any spoilers, but I'm not very used to doing reviews like these, so there might accidentally be some spoilers. So if you definitely don't want to know too much about a book before you read it, then maybe just wait with watching this video until after you read the book, and then come and we can then have a chat in the comments. But because I might just accidentally say something that I don't think is a spoiler, but maybe other people will feel that is a spoiler. Okay, so just you've been warned. But personally, when I'm reading books, I actually want to know as little as possible about them so that I can really just soak them in from my own, I can like them or not like them, depending 100% on my own experience. And then I like to go in and look at the reviews. But people obviously like to do things in a different manner. But anyway, this is Mathilda. It is a novel or novella by Mary Shelley, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. She was born in 1797, died in the mid-19th century, and she wrote this book in 1819 to 1820. I do have some notes here just in case if you see me looking. So she wrote this book at around 1820, but it wasn't published until 1959. Yeah, so it was kind of lost among her or her husband's Percy Shelley's work for many decades. So Mary Shelley people know because her most famous work is Frankenstein. She wrote Frankenstein when she was 19, and it's obviously just a phenomenal piece of work. I've read that as well and absolutely loved it. It just gives so much more depth to the story if you've just seen some of the movies or the adaptations about Frankenstein. Those are nothing compared to the book. The book is phenomenal, and I really love this kind of flowing romantic style of writing. She was obviously in that kind of time period. Her husband was Percy Shelley, who was one of the big romantic poets, romantic with a big R, the romantic period. Her father was a philosopher. No, he was a political philosopher. Her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, who was also a philosopher and a women's rights activist. And even though the mother died shortly after Mary Shelley was born, I'm sure her work and her kind of legacy impacted her greatly. But Mary wrote, actually, when I found Mathilda, I was surprised because for some reason I thought that she had only written Frankenstein, that had been an only novel, but obviously I was wrong. She wrote, her other novels are Walpurga, Perkin Warbeck, The Last Man, Lodore, and Faulkner. I have not read any of those, but I would love to, and I will get to them at some point for sure. And she also wrote travel books. She traveled quite a lot with her husband and his circle of poets, poetic people, and she wrote some articles, and so she was quite the prolific writer and author. So she also worked a lot with her husband and assisted him in editing his works and his and like promoting them. But Shelley, Percy, or Shelley, Shelley. I cannot pronounce his middle name. Sorry. He obviously had a lot of good poems. He's one of my favorite poets ever. I have his work here, and I love him. But their relationship was quite scandalous because they met when she was 17 or something like that. It wasn't a scandal, but the scandal was that he was already married, but they had a relationship. She got pregnant, and then his wife dies from suicide, and then they get married. So it's very scandalous, everything around that. And they had a very sad, he died only 6 years after they married, and they had 4 children. 3 of them died in childhood, so it was quite a tragic life, for sure. And she suffered from a lot of depression, as you can imagine, after the death of her children. And according to what I've read about her, she found a lot of comfort in writing, including Mathilda, which I will talk about a little bit later, but it explains probably some things about Mathilda. Mary and her husband seem to have had a lovely marriage, at least with what I've found out. And he actually, when she was in this really depressive state, he actually wrote poems about it. That's what you would do as a romantic poet, right? I actually have it here, and it's so beautiful. First, when I read the poem, I was like, oh, did she die before him? Because I was pretty sure that he died before her. But so apparently this was something that he wrote when she had kind of completely withdrawn herself through her grief and depression. And it's like, this was published quite later, but it was written in 1819. My dearest Mary, wherefore hast thou gone, and left me in this dreary world alone? Thy form is here indeed, a lovely one, but thou art fled, gone down the dreary road that leads to sorrow's most obscure abode. Thou sittest on the earth of pale despair, where for thine own sake I cannot follow thee. I apologize for I'm not necessarily the best at saying like own, what's the word? A poem? Oh, so beautiful. But anyway, this is not about Mary Shelley or her husband or their life. It's about Mathilda. Yeah, so, as I said, it wasn't published until the middle of the 20th century, like almost more than 100 years after it was written. Mary Shelley wrote it, I think she was in Italy or Switzerland or somewhere when she wrote it, and she sent it to her father in England and asked him to publish it, but he no, I don't think so. So it was just kind of put away for many years. But it's her second book that she wrote after Frankenstein, and it deals with very common romantic with a big R kind of themes. There's suicide, grief, incest, some really big themes. So the book is narrated by Mathilda, and she's writing a letter to someone as she's lying on her deathbed and like telling her life story. So her story, I think the kind of, you can see that everywhere if you read kind of the information about the book. It is deals with her absent parents and some taboo feelings between or from a father towards a daughter. And so basically, through the narration, we learn about Mathilda's life story, kind of her parents' love story, which is so beautiful and so like fancifully written, really. Her mother's death in childbed, her father's grief and loss and heartache, and then kind of how things develop from there. And there's been some critiques that claim that this might be an autobiographical story, and there are like some similar points in this, like her Mary's mother's death, her relationship with Percy Shelley, but as I was Googling and finding information, there is no indication that there was anything remotely similar going on in her relationship with her father. But yeah, so I think that this is one of the most beautiful stories that I have read in a very long time. I mean, the writing is sublime. Oh my God. I have a video where I talk about the books that I read in January in 2024, and I say in there I'm comparing reading this book like basically floating on a cloud, or laying on a little boat in the waves on the ocean. Like it's like you're just, ooh, that's how the style is. It's so flowy and beautiful, and it's very poetic. It is really almost like a long poem in a way, and it's just so romantic, like romantic with a big R, you know. It fits perfectly with the romantic poets of the time. You know, the language is very embellished and quite extreme. It's packed with emotions, packed with feelings. It's very melodramatic, intense, and in many ways it's completely over the top, like completely over the top. And there is no doubt that this poor Mathilda is so miserable and sad, and that her life has been just filled with loneliness, and yeah, just been miserable. She's had a miserable life, basically. But Mary Shelley writes it so well. She writes so well about this depression and grief and sadness and loneliness that you can just feel it. It's almost like these feelings take physical form, and they are just like sitting on top of you when you're reading this book. It is so impactful. Like, oh my God. Now, I went on Goodreads to see what other people had written about this book. So usually that's what I do. I will write my own feelings and my own kind of review, and then I will go and like see what other people have written and like what other critique there has been. And there's this person on Goodreads. Her name is Jessica. I will leave her. She actually has a blog that she was talking about this book. I will leave it in the description. And she like counted some of the words in this book, and I thought it was hilarious actually, and it's very telling as well. So she like counted like alas 24 times, agony 11 times, sorrow 28 times, misery 26 times, grief 48 times, bitter 30 times, tears 50 times, despair 52 times, and last but not least the words death 59 times, die 64 times, or dead 23 times were used for a combined total of 146 times. I think it's hilarious that she would actually do that. But it's very descriptive, right? It tells you everything that this book is about. It's so dramatic, it is so intense, and it's like, it is not for everyone. I would definitely say that if you don't have the patience, if you want action, if you want things to be happening, if you want things to be happening and you want people to like get over things, this is not the book for you. This is a book to read when you're just wanting to indulge completely in emotions. So I read this book quite quickly. I listened to it actually as an audiobook. And it was so nice. It was so beautiful. It was narrated by Corey Samuel, and she did it so well. It was so yeah, it was so good. Anyway, so I mean, so I think it took me like 4 days to read it, because I mean, it should have taken me just like maybe 2 days or 1 day or whatever, but it took me a little bit longer, because sometimes when I would start to listen to it, I was just like, no, I can't deal with you now, Mathilda, get a grip. So I had to just like put it aside and do something else. And because you just kind of wanted to sometimes, get a grip, woman, stop it. It's just like, oh my God. She's saying how unhappy she is in 149 pages. Like, that's all she's saying, basically. I'm very unhappy and sad and lonely, and it's just like, it goes on and on and on. But I loved it. It's a mood read, so you have to be in the right mood. So if I would not have been interested in this type of literature, or if I just wasn't in the mood for this indulgence of negative feelings or sad feelings, I would not give it 5 stars. But I don't know, something about it just captured me, and so I love being able to read books like this on occasion, not all the time for sure, but to have a book like this on occasion is just, it's like this sublime piece of chocolate in the chocolate box, like very, very, like, so sweet and so like in, like, just like it like melts all over in your mouth, and it's just, but if you would eat 2 of them, you would just like throw up. So 1 of them is fine, but too much, yeah. And yeah, so definitely don't read this book if you're not interested in melodrama. For sure. But I think that if you're feeling like this is something that you can indulge yourself with, and just allow yourself to kind of go with the flow, and I think it's a very good book for someone like me who's really trying to work with like slow living. I'm really trying to implement slow living in my life, so this is definitely a book for that, because it's very like slow and relaxing. But I think that in many ways it's similar to Frankenstein. That is the writing. Obviously, the theme is completely different. Although, I mean, there is also the theme there of loneliness and guilt and all these things. But I don't know. It's very indulgent. It's very romantic with a big R. And I actually also think now, in hindsight, that I know about Mary's life, I think a little bit different about this work. How she was really writing it to write herself out of her intense grief for the loss of her children. And when you think about it like that, it's just like, oh. So I actually think this could be a really good book to read if you are if you're going through grief or going through some sort of a loss, because I think it can really help you process those feelings. At least that's what I felt, for sure. And it's such a beautiful book. It's written sublimely, and it's about these hard topics of grief, depression, suicide, death, and guilt. But I think she does it so beautifully, and just, it's sublime. 5 stars for sure. So there's that, my first book review here on my little channel, and I hope it was enjoyable and you maybe learned something from it, or found something that you agree with or maybe disagree with. I would love to hear from you in the comments if you read the book and what you felt. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.